The email arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Friday, buried between spam and a grocery store coupon. Your employment with DataVault Solutions has been terminated effective immediately. No phone call, no meeting, no explanation. Just 22 words that erased 3 years of my life. But they made one catastrophic mistake. They forgot I still had master access to every single client's personal data, financial records, and corporate secrets. What happened next would cost them everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The cursor blinked against the blue glow of my laptop screen as I sat in my Boston apartment, rain pattering against the windows like Morse code. I read the termination email 3 times, each pass making the reality sink deeper. Maya Chen, Senior Data Security Analyst, was no longer employed by DataVault Solutions. No severance package details, no final paycheck information, no return of company property instructions. Just a cold corporate goodbye delivered through an automated system. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my work laptop, expecting to find my credentials already disabled. Instead, the familiar DataVault dashboard loaded without issue. My administrator access was intact. Every client database, every encryption key, every backup server, all still responding to my login as if nothing had changed. Either their IT department was incompetent, or they were planning something worse than a simple termination. DataVault Solutions wasn't always the soulless corporation it had become. When I joined 3 years ago, it was a scrappy startup promising to revolutionize data security for small businesses. The founder, Rebecca Martinez, had pitched me over coffee in a cramped co-working space, her eyes bright with genuine passion for protecting people's digital lives. "We're not just storing data," she'd said. "We're building digital fortresses for people who can't afford their own IT departments." I believed in that mission. I'd spent my previous 5 years watching big corporations get hacked. While small businesses suffered in silence, their customer data sold on dark web marketplaces because they couldn't afford enterprise-level security. DataVault felt like the answer, a company that would democratize digital protection. Rebecca hired me as their 3rd employee, tasking me with building their core security infrastructure from scratch. I designed the encryption protocols, established the backup systems, and created the client management framework that would eventually house sensitive information for over 15,000 small businesses across New England. Restaurants storing customer credit cards, medical practices protecting patient records, law firms safeguarding privileged communications, all of it flowing through systems I had architected with obsessive attention to detail. The work was exhilarating. I'd arrive at our cramped office above a pizza shop at 7 in the morning and code until midnight. Fueled by Rebecca's infectious optimism and the knowledge that every line of code I wrote protected real people's lives. When a data breach could destroy a small business overnight, we were their shield. But success changed everything. The Series A funding brought in venture capitalists who spoke in acronyms and quarter-over-quarter growth projections. Rebecca's passionate speeches about digital protection were replaced by boardroom presentations about market penetration and customer acquisition costs. The pizza shop office gave way to a gleaming downtown tower with glass conference rooms and catered lunch meetings. New executives arrived like colonizers, each one bringing their own vision of what DataVault should become. Marcus Webb, the new chief technology officer, spoke constantly about, quote, optimizing operational efficiency, and, quote, streamlining legacy processes. Translation: cut costs and maximize profits, regardless of security implications. During our first team meeting, he'd looked directly at me and said, "We need to move away from boutique solutions and embrace industry standards." I'd built those boutique solutions to be unhackable. Industry standards meant cheaper, more vulnerable systems that looked good on quarterly reports but left our clients exposed. When I voiced these concerns, Marcus smiled condescendingly and told me to, quote, trust the process. The process, it turned out, involved gradually removing my access to critical systems. It started subtly. A server migration here, a a password change there. Nothing dramatic enough to raise immediate alarms. But each small change chipped away at my ability to monitor and protect the infrastructure I'd built. When I asked about these changes during team meetings, Marcus would wave dismissively and mumble something about security protocols and, quote, compartmentalized access. 3 months ago, I discovered they were interviewing candidates for a new senior security architect position. My job, essentially, but with a different title and reporting structure. The job posting, which I found through a former colleague, described responsibilities that matched my daily tasks exactly. They weren't just planning to replace me, they were planning to erase my contributions entirely. I started documenting everything, every system I'd built, every security protocol I'd implemented, every client database I'd designed. If they wanted to push me out, I'd make sure they understood exactly what they were losing. But documentation felt passive, defensive. I needed insurance. That's when I created the dead man's switch. It wasn't malicious code designed to destroy data or crash systems. Instead, it was an elegant piece of logic buried deep within the client management framework, designed to activate only under very specific circumstances. If my administrative access was revoked suddenly, not through a proper handoff process, but abruptly, as would happen during an unplanned termination, the system would initiate a complete security lockdown. Every client database would automatically encrypt itself with rotating keys that only I possessed. All backup servers would enter maintenance mode. Customer access portals would display a professional message explaining that DataVault was conducting, quote, emergency security upgrades, and would resume normal operations pending, quote, administrative review. No data would be deleted or corrupted, but it would become completely inaccessible to anyone except me. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I told myself it was just a precaution, a way to ensure they couldn't lock me out and then demand I train my replacement for free. The dead man's switch would only activate if they tried to screw me over completely. If they handled my departure professionally, with proper notice and transition time, it would never trigger. I should have known better. Corporations like DataVault don't do professional departures. They do swift, brutal cuts designed to minimize liability and maximize control. The termination email proved that, but they'd miscalculated badly. By firing me abruptly without revoking my access first, they'd triggered the very scenario my dead man's switch was designed to prevent. I opened the DataVault admin panel and watched the cascade begin. One by one, client databases shifted from green to amber status indicators. The lockdown was elegant and thorough. No alarms, no error messages, just a smooth transition into impenetrable security mode. Within 15 minutes, every piece of sensitive data in DataVault's care had become as inaccessible as if it were locked in a vault at the bottom of the ocean. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Kim, one of the junior developers I'd mentored. Maya, something weird is happening with the client systems. Everything's showing maintenance mode, but there's no scheduled downtime tonight. Do you know what's going on? I stared at the message for a long moment, then powered off my phone. Sarah was a good kid who didn't deserve to get caught in whatever corporate warfare was about to unfold, but she'd figure out soon enough that I was no longer available to fix DataVault's problems. The irony wasn't lost on me. DataVault had built its reputation on protecting sensitive information, and now that very mission had become their vulnerability. Every client contract included strict penalties for data unavailability. Law firms couldn't access case files. Medical practices couldn't retrieve patient records. Restaurants couldn't process credit card transactions. The company that promised digital security had become digitally paralyzed. I poured another glass of wine and opened my personal laptop, pulling up news sites and social media feeds. It would take a few hours for the full scope of the outage to become clear, but by morning, DataVault would be facing a crisis that made their worst nightmares look like minor inconveniences. The first panicked call came at 6:23 a.m. My work phone, which I'd left powered off all night, had accumulated 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I scrolled through them over coffee, watching the progression from confusion to concern to barely contained panic. Marcus Webb had called 6 times between midnight and 3 a.m. His voicemails evolved from professional concern to thinly veiled threats. "Maya, we need you to log in immediately and resolve this system issue. I don't know what kind of prank you think you're pulling, but this needs to stop right now." Rebecca Martinez had left 3 messages, her voice tight with stress. "Maya, I know about the termination email, and I'm sorry it went down that way. But we need to talk immediately. Please call me back." The text messages painted a picture of complete chaos. Sarah Kim, "Maya, clients are calling nonstop. Nobody can access anything. Marcus is freaking out." David Chen, from customer support, "We have over 200 angry clients threatening to sue. Where are you?" Jennifer Walsh, from accounting, "The board is having an emergency meeting. They're looking for you everywhere." I finished my coffee and took a shower, letting the hot water wash away 3 years of corporate stress. When I finally checked my phone again, I had missed 37 additional calls. The panic was escalating beautifully. The first news article appeared at 8:15 a.m. on TechCrunch. DataVault Solutions suffers major outage, thousands of small businesses affected. The reporter had done their homework, interviewing frustrated clients and highlighting the irony of a security company losing control of its own systems. The article mentioned that DataVault had not responded to requests for comment, which suggested they were too busy dealing with the crisis to manage their public relations. By 9 a.m., my personal phone started ringing. Rebecca Martinez's number flashed on the screen repeatedly. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her increasingly desperate messages. "Maya, please, we need to talk. I know this looks bad, but there are things you don't understand. The termination wasn't my decision. Please just call me back so we can fix this." "The 5th call from Rebecca," I answered. Her voice was raw with exhaustion and barely controlled panic. "Maya, thank God. Where are you? We need you in the office immediately." "I don't work for DataVault anymore," I said calmly. "I received my termination email last night. Very professional, by the way. Really set the tone for how much you value your employees." "That was a mistake." Marcus jumped the gun. "The board never approved." "The board never approved what, exactly? Firing me? Or doing it via email?" Rebecca's silence stretched long enough that I could hear heated voices in the background. "Maya, I can't get into details over the phone, but we're prepared to offer you your job back. Full reinstatement plus a significant raise. We just need you to come in and restore system access immediately." I walked to my apartment window, looking out at the Boston Harbor in the distance. Somewhere across the city, DataVault's gleaming office tower was probably swarming with stressed executives and overwhelmed IT staff, all frantically trying to undo a problem they'd created through their own arrogance and poor planning. "I'll consider it," I said finally. "But first, I want to understand exactly why I was terminated in the first place. And I want Marcus Webb in the room when we have that conversation." "Maya, there isn't time for—" "Then I guess there isn't time to restore your systems either." I hung up and turned my phone to silent mode. Outside, Boston was waking up to another beautiful autumn morning, completely unaware that 15,000 small businesses were slowly realizing they couldn't access their most critical data. Coffee shops couldn't process payments. Doctors' offices couldn't pull up patient files. Law firms couldn't access case documents. DataVault's promise of seamless, secure data management had become a nightmare of inaccessibility and corporate dysfunction. And somewhere in a downtown office tower, executives who thought they could dispose of employees like outdated software were learning that some people are irreplaceable. The real education was just beginning. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m., but by noon, DataVault's lobby looked like a war zone. Frantic executives rushed between elevator banks, while customer service representatives fielded call after call from increasingly hostile clients. Through the glass windows, I could see local news vans setting up outside, their satellite dishes pointing skyward like mechanical flowers seeking sunlight. I arrived at exactly 2 p.m., dressed in my best Navy suit, and carrying a leather briefcase that contained everything I needed to either save DataVault or watch it burn. The security guard at the front desk recognized me but hesitated before swiping me through, Word had clearly spread that I was at the center of whatever crisis was consuming the company. The boardroom on the 42nd floor buzzed with nervous energy. Rebecca Martinez sat at the head of the mahogany table, her usually perfect appearance disheveled, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept. Marcus Webb hunched over his laptop, typing furiously while occasionally glancing up with barely concealed hostility. 3 board members I didn't recognize flanked them, their expensive suits and grim expressions marking them as the venture capitalists who'd been pulling strings behind the scenes. Maya. Rebecca stood as I entered, relief and desperation warring in her voice. Thank you for coming. We need to resolve this situation immediately. I set my briefcase on the table and remained standing. Before we discuss solutions, I want to understand the problem. Specifically, why I received a termination email at midnight on a Friday, with no prior warning, no explanation, and no professional courtesy. Marcus looked up from his laptop, his face flushed with anger. You want to talk about professional courtesy? You've locked down our entire infrastructure and held our clients hostage. That's corporate sabotage. I haven't sabotaged anything, I replied calmly. The system implemented an automatic security protocol when my administrative access was compromised. It's designed to protect client data during personnel transitions. If you'd followed proper procedures. Proper procedures? Marcus slammed his laptop shut. You're a disgruntled employee who built a time bomb into our systems. We should be calling the FBI, not negotiating with you. One of the board members, a silver-haired man in an Armani suit, raised his hand for silence. Mr. Webb, perhaps you could explain why Ms. Chen still has administrative access 12 hours after her termination. Marcus's face went pale. There was a miscommunication between HR and IT. We planned to revoke her access Monday morning during regular business hours. You plan to fire me Friday night and revoke my access Monday morning? I couldn't hide my disbelief. Did it occur to anyone that I might notice being terminated over the weekend? Rebecca leaned forward, her voice taking on the persuasive tone I remembered from our early days. Maya, I know this looks bad, but the termination was Marcus's decision, made without board approval. I've been fighting it since I found out. We want you back. Full reinstatement, 20% salary increase, and we'll add equity options to your compensation package. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder, setting it on the table between us. That's generous, but I think we need to address some fundamental issues first. Marcus mentioned calling the FBI, which is interesting, because I've been documenting some concerning activities that might interest federal investigators. The room went silent, except for the hum of air conditioning and distant traffic noise 42 floors below. I opened the folder and spread out printed documents like playing cards across the polished table. 3 months ago, DataVault began implementing cost-cutting measures that directly compromised client data security. Marcus personally approved the migration of sensitive databases to cheaper cloud servers with known vulnerabilities. When I raised concerns, I was told to trust the process. Marcus started to object, but I continued. 6 weeks ago, I discovered that DataVault was selling anonymized client data to marketing companies without explicit consent. The anonymization was superficial. Anyone with basic data analysis skills could reverse engineer individual identities. I documented this and sent a report to Rebecca, which was apparently buried. Rebecca's face had gone ashen. Maya, I never received any report about data sales. I slid a printed email across the table. You replied within 30 minutes, telling me to discuss concerns through proper channels and not to rock the boat during the funding round. The silver-haired board member picked up the email, scanning it quickly. His expression grew darker with each line. Ms. Martinez, is this your response to a report about illegal data sales? There were a lot of emails during the Series B preparation. I may have misunderstood the severity. 2 weeks ago, I interrupted, I discovered that Marcus had been negotiating a side deal to sell DataVault's client list to our primary competitor, SecureStore Technologies. The deal included detailed information about our security protocols, client vulnerabilities, and pricing structures. I have recorded phone conversations, email chains, and financial documents proving this conspiracy. Marcus shot to his feet. That's absolutely false. You can't prove. I pulled out my phone and played an audio recording. Marcus's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. The Chen woman is getting too suspicious. We need to move the timeline up. Can Secure Store handle the client migration if we execute the termination next Friday? The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus sank back into his chair, his face cycling through denial, anger, and resignation. Rebecca stared at him like she'd never seen him before. The board members exchanged glances that spoke volumes about shifting loyalties and corporate liability. The FBI is indeed interested in this case, I continued, but not for the reasons Marcus suggested. I filed a whistleblower complaint this morning detailing the data sales, security compromises, and attempted corporate espionage. Agent Sarah Rodriguez from the Boston field office will be here at 4 p.m. to begin interviews. The silver-haired board member leaned back in his chair, studying me with new respect. Ms. Chen, what exactly are you proposing? I closed the folder and met each of their gazes in turn. Marcus Webb is terminated immediately, with no severance and no non-disclosure agreement. Rebecca Martinez steps down as CEO, but remains on the board in an advisory capacity. I assume the role of Chief Technology Officer with full authority over all technical decisions and personnel. DataVault implements a comprehensive security audit, pays appropriate fines for regulatory violations, and establishes a legal client data protection fund. You're asking for control of the company, Rebecca said quietly. I'm asking for the authority to fix what's broken before it destroys everything we built. DataVault can survive this crisis, but only if we stop pretending that cutting corners and maximizing profits is more important than protecting our clients' trust. Marcus found his voice again, though it came out as a croak. You can't just waltz in here and take over. The board won't. The board will do whatever is necessary to avoid federal prosecution and complete financial ruin, the silver-haired man interrupted. Ms. Chen, assuming we agree to your terms, how quickly can you restore system access? I smiled for the first time since entering the room. Immediately. But I need written authorization and a public statement acknowledging my role in building DataVault's security infrastructure. No more erasure, no more marginalization. If I'm going to save this company, everyone needs to understand exactly who's responsible for its survival. Within an hour, contracts were signed, press releases were drafted, and my administrative access was officially restored. But I didn't unlock the systems immediately. Instead, I spent the rest of the afternoon in individual meetings with every department head, explaining exactly what had happened and what would change going forward. The customer service team learned that we would be personally calling every affected client to explain the situation and offer free security audits. The development team discovered they would be implementing new protocols that prioritize security over speed to market. The sales team was informed that we would no longer promise features we couldn't deliver securely. Most importantly, I met with Sarah Kim and the other junior developers who'd been working frantically all day trying to understand the system lockdown. I explained the dead man's switch in detail, showing them how elegant security could be when it was designed by someone who understood both technology and human nature. You built a system that could protect itself, Sarah said, her eyes bright with admiration. That's incredible. I built a system that could protect our clients, I corrected. The self-protection was just insurance against people who didn't understand the responsibility we carry. By 6 p.m., local news stations were reporting that DataVault had resolved its technical issues and would resume normal operations the following morning. But behind the scenes, a much more significant transformation was taking place. FBI agents interviewed Marcus Webb for 3 hours before escorting him from the building. Rebecca Martinez held a tearful press conference acknowledging management failures and promising comprehensive reforms. I stood in my new corner office, watching the sun set over Boston Harbor, and began the process of unlocking 15,000 databases. Each client system came back online with enhanced security protocols and detailed logs showing exactly what data had been accessed during the outage. The answer was simple: none. No client information had been compromised, corrupted, or accessed inappropriately during the lockdown. The dead man's switch had worked perfectly, protecting both DataVault's clients and my own interests. But more importantly, it had exposed the cancer that was eating away at the company I'd helped build. Marcus Webb's attempted sabotage and Rebecca's willful blindness had nearly destroyed everything, but they'd also created an opportunity for real change. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Rodriguez. Preliminary investigation confirms your whistleblower claims. Secure store executives detained for questioning, well done. Over the following weeks, DataVault underwent the most comprehensive transformation in its history. We hired new staff with backgrounds in cybersecurity and data protection. We implemented transparent reporting protocols that gave clients real-time insight into how their data was being handled. We established an independent security board with oversight authority that couldn't be overruled by profit-focused executives. Most importantly, we created a culture where technical expertise was respected rather than marginalized. The days of business majors making security decisions they didn't understand were over. DataVault would succeed or fail based on its ability to protect client data, not its ability to maximize quarterly profits. 6 months later, DataVault had not only recovered from the crisis, but had become the most trusted name in small business data security. Our client base had grown by 40%, our security protocols had been adopted as industry standards, and I'd been featured on the cover of Cybersecurity Today magazine as the woman who saved data security. But the real victory wasn't the recognition or the financial success. It was the knowledge that thousands of small businesses could sleep soundly knowing their most sensitive information was protected by systems designed by someone who understood that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. The email that had arrived at 11:47 p.m. on that Friday night had been intended to end my career. Instead, it had become the catalyst for proving that expertise combined with integrity could overcome corporate greed and incompetence. They'd forgotten I had access to every client's personal data, but more importantly, they'd forgotten that some people can't be bought, intimidated, or erased. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being irreplaceable when everyone else proves they're not. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.